Next, we're going to be checking out 40k Isn't That Overpowered by PancreasNoWork. I've been suggested this guy for a long time, and this specific video probably since it came out. Yeah. So we're going to see what I've been missing and not just putting off and then thinking I would get to and then forgetting to get to for over a year now. Yeah, that's never happened.
Yeah, that's right. You have eyes. You read the video title. Let's cut right to the chase.
Yeah.
I don't think 40k is that OP as a setting.
not.
Now, for those of you who are a bit observant and haven't already started typing some real colorful comments for me, you'll know.
You know, I'm actually missing out right now. I should have gotten something about re in the chat to start with. Oh, and the first person isn't just typing re. I'm actually a little disappointed in the YouTube for that.
It's the great big that in the title. 40k is pretty OP. It's got rocket launcher grenade rifles as a standard weapon for one of its factions. The Necron.
Oh, I mean, depending on who you talk to, it could be rocket launcher grenade rifles. For others, it's just heavy shell caliber. For some, they're hollow point. For some, they're explosive point. For some, they're not actually explosive, but it does a lot of damage as if they're explosive. For some, they're a lot bigger. For some, they're a lot smaller. The one thing that all 40k has in common is that it will change based on the writer. Oh, God, does it change. Don't even get me started about in-game additions.
Necrons have that funny button that can accidentally start a cascade of supernovas across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And all that dark age of technology stuff that only ever gets brought into play when someone wants to make a point about 40k being OP. The setting is nuts, but I've gazed...
I mean, if you get into dark age technology shit, yeah, you could go as dark or as fucked up as you want depending on how close to the collapse you get. And then there's the entire interpretation that humanity stopped being human by the end of it, and maybe it was right to be destroyed. I don't know, and no one does, because they're intentionally not touching that.
Gazed into the abyss of what's truly considered overpowered, and there's a lot of stuff that can beat it. A pretty good amount, actually.
I mean, when you get into writing, not just... I think it's... not the Acumen. There's an entire book series, not an anime. I knew the title of it. It's an entire AI-run civilization that spans multiple universes as hyper-controlled factions, and I did not remember the name of it.
I've thought about how to phrase it best, and I think I finally figured it out.
They're
40K is
high
like
for the
Ornstein and
tabletop.
Smo from Dark Souls. If you want to get to the real big boys of the game, you gotta get through them first. And if you want your franchise to be considered truly ball-bustingly OP, you gotta get past the kind of crap 40k has in it. Please make all sorts of jokes about how 40k is the Dark Souls of Ornstein and Smo or whatever.
I was going to make a joke here, then I realized this is perfectly accurate because these two were a player skill check early on, so you couldn't just unga-bunga it unless you really unga-bunga'd it by abusing some of the magic systems in that game. I didn't know that at the time I was playing it. And that's perfectly accurate because 40k is the most approachable about the high power level ones. And then you get to the really crazy shit in anime and fiction. And yeah, that is a thing. I mean, when Ender's Game was flat out, our generic usage of weapons starts with cascading reaction of matter destruction. So yeah.
It's a dead meme, and 40k is nothing if not welcoming to dead memes. So here's one
Reuses
more
them.
video to add to the pile of them I've made comparing other settings to 40k.
It's stronger than
Something
most
small and easy
popular
to end the year on, yeah?
mainstream
For those of you with similar
sci-fi
views to me,
factions.
here's a video about nothing of particular importance. For those of you who make 40k your personality, I just have one question to ask. But can the Emperor beat Goku? Before I get started power scaling...
He's asking a stupid question. Could the Emperor beat Goku? Because there's going to be someone in the chat talking about it. But let's be completely honest. This fight would start with the Emperor getting a Sensu Bean, immediately solving all the problems in the Imperium, and then Goku fighting him. And everyone is going to be sitting there going like, did he just save our god? And then challenge our god to a fight? Do we love or hate the alien? Did the alien just save us? And causing an entire internal rift just by the act of healing the God Emperor with a single Sensu Bean that he does because it's freaking Goku. This actually sounds hilarious. I kind of want to find something about that. Oh, dear God.
40k into the dirt, however, there's something to discuss. Do you like learning? Do you hate school and how tedious and miserable it can be? Well, then...
Sponsorship. I actually heard about Brilliant. It looks interesting.
Alright, let's start listing off franchises. This will be rather light on specifics, by the way. The love I have for...
I'm using this bear for the third time. Words are not enough to describe the sheer joy I am feeling. I know he's using a tired, drawn-out bear, but can we just acknowledge it is so floofy? If it wasn't just a giant murder rug, I would want to cuddle that thing. But it would eat me, because that's a brown bear, and it would eat me. A black bear? You might get away with it if you're also making a lot of noise. Not a brown bear, though.
For Halo, or Obsession, if you're feeling less generous, isn't quite shared with everything else on this list. Let's start with a pretty common one.
Yeah, they lose.
Overall, I'd say 40k wins.
Yeah.
The tech is bigger and better, the scale is bigger, and a lot of the Psychers in 40k could demolish the average Jedi or Sith. That being said, Star Wars has some stuff going for it. The higher-end estimates of the Confederacy place their military at several quadrillion battle droids.
And if you haven't already, check out a fan with too much time doing an entire breakdown in narrative format of this entire matchup. It's freaking awesome, but he hasn't updated in like 7 months. Or was it 11 months? I don't know. It's been too long.
That's a lot of wrist rockets you gotta worry about. So drowning out a few Crusade fleets or Orc-Waz and droids is entirely feasible. And the amount of Force users in Star Wars that veer into being eldritch abominations is a...
There's no veering. You got a picture of Abeloth right here. It's one of the few things in Star Wars that would look at the 40k gods and go, oh, my people. And not be sarcastic about it. The more you know about Abeloth, the more you realize if the series had gone on in Legends longer, it would be a completely different franchise. It's fucked up.
A lot higher than you might think if you're not super familiar with the lore.
But it's also
There's
so
Abeloth,
niche and not
straight
technically
up
canon.
An H.P. Lovecraft creature.
Yes.
There's Darth Nihilus, owner of the coolest mask in fiction and a wound in the Force who eats planets for breakfast. And do you remember that time Anakin Force chokeslammed 2 gods in the Clone Wars? But
he doesn't.
This, the overall scale and relentless warmongering
Spoiler?
of 40k means Star Wars is going to go down when you compare it to 40k. See, we're easing into things with settings I think 40k can beat. You gotta set the precedent, you know? That being said, I would take a clone trooper over the best guardsman any day of the week.
Yeah, clone troopers are generally better. Granted, drowning things in droids also is generally better because there's literally no loss there.
Quite frankly, I'd take a clone over a good deal of Space Marine chapters. Delta Squad would body Cato Sicarius. Dead Space is real only here because I think it's cool, but necromorphs are damn scary. Humanity.
I mean, this is basically just one guy soloing infection by Nurgle, so it kind of fits in more than anything else.
Itself and the aliens in Dead Space probably wouldn't be seeing much competition against Warhammer.
Nah.
The necromorphs, though, those could be a problem. Convergence events and the markers would play merry hell on humanity, Tau, and maybe even the orcs. And a necromorph infestation on the large end of things is going to play a lot like a Tyranid invasion, only even more horrifying. Imagine a space marine getting necromorphed. That is an unstoppable monster.
I'm pretty sure that's just what happens when enough are eaten by the Tyranids, though. Actually, considering they've already had forms that are explicitly only psychic because they ate enough Eldar, I'm wondering what would happen if they ate enough Space Marines to make their own Space Marine version of a Necron, sorry, not Necron, a Tyranid warrior. That is the most fucked up, amazing thing possible. Oh my, I don't know if that is amazing or horrible. Just like imagine all of the really fucked up shit you can get with, you know, Tyranids stealing a bit because they decide to copy some of the extreme genetics. Why? Well, it'll be lost to them long enough that maybe it's a good idea to steal some things from them. Also, they would be stupid and they could have a lot of fun with it. It'd be like extreme chaos mutations, except bug-based, and that might be fun to look at.
Granted, being an unstoppable horde of monsters isn't that special in 40k.
I
mean, there's plenty of those already. A proper Tyranid high fleet or some orc warbands could probably take on the necromorphs.
And they would like it
risky,
the orcs.
If the necromorphs win, they've got a new Brethren moon. But 40k also has plenty of ways to blow a planet straight to hell, so even the Brethren moons themselves are fair game here.
Hell, there's plenty of enemies in 40k who have moons as their default ship. Orcs are one of them. At the higher end, but when the orcs get to that higher end, it's bad. It's really bad. Tyranids, I mean, they're transgalactic, and when you think about that, they're probably not actually fighting us. We're literally just scraping a cilium that's probably in our direction at this point.
Really, the Brethren Moons and Necromorphs are pretty fitting in with 40k.
Yeah,
They're damn near unkillable to the point that I think shooting off their limbs in Dead Space doesn't actually kill them. It just immobilizes them, shutting them down in a way. Of course, Isaac Clarke was in no way prepared to deal with them, and he managed it, so I'm sure someone like Gilliman or Eldrad could handle things. Another 40k win, but...
Gilliman, yes. Eldred, he's an Eldar. He would probably see the absolute perfect way forward, figure out exactly what he needs to do at the exact right time, give the best advice to the one person who will not listen to it. Again, I'm looking at you. He canonically told Fulgrim exactly what not to do. At the exact time, it was already too late because he had already been corrupted by the goddamn sword. That's canon. The Eldar were helping. They just chose the wrong person to tell.
Hey, if it's any consolation, Dead Space fans, I'd rather face most threats in 40k than I would a necromorph. I can reason with the Tau at least, or at a stretch an orc. I can't reason with...
See, that's completely not even close to reality right there. He said the Tau were a threat to be reasoned with. They're not a threat.
The ghost lady telling me to make us whole. This'll probably be a proper video on its own eventually, since I've been getting more...
Honestly, I don't think it's a matter of Battletech would in any way, shape, or form fight them. They don't have spaceships at nearly the power level to survive long enough that they would ever have people fight at the lower level. But every single person in 40k who looks at how these guys can produce even their lowest level walkers at that level would look at this and go, we will pay you anything to keep making these. Like, these guys could more or less get a king's ransom for just basic mech production. This is like the holy grail to 40k. All the mechs, almost no AI involved because it's mostly run by human. This is like, we are mass producing knights at a level that you have never seen since your golden age. And there's not an AI running it. Yeah, they don't so much win as have all the bribes. And I do mean even at their least technologically advanced version.
More and more into Battletech as time goes on.
I like
That's
the setting,
for later,
honestly.
though. For now, I'll just say that on the grand scale, it's a pretty grim scenario for Battletech in this matchup. It's centered around a couple thousand planets over a roughly 500 light-year radius.
Yeah, it's
That's
small.
the inner sphere, where most of the cool stuff in the setting goes down.
Yeah, like, no, they lose in a fight, but they have all the things the Imperium wants. They could definitely bribe them, which is also a thing the Imperium does frequently. If you can offer them enough shit to make it worth their while, they will give you a lot of freedom. Look at Ultramar. Look at the Mechanicus. It's actually something they love. Hell, technically look at Krieg. Krieg is not forced to do most of what they do. They overproduce. Krieg is one of the few planets, although maybe people because it's a clone army, that go, hey, you know what? Here's your tithe. And they look at them and goes, okay, do we have to produce that few? Let's do more. Can we produce more? And the Imperium are like, what? This is not even a non-canon joke at this point. That's literally how it works. Yeah. If for some reason there was ever an entire meeting between Battletech and the Imperium, it would go one of two ways. They either just lose, or someone in the Imperium realizes, wait, they can mass produce how many walkers? How fast? There's no AI involved? They're all human? There's literally no downside here. At no point is there a downside to taking their tech. It's all perfectly kosher as far as the mechanic goes. And they also have faster than light communication that's reliable over a large section of the galaxy. So yeah, it just kind of works. Also, Pylo, I saw a fanfic that put a version of Battletech in 40k, and yeah, the Mechanicus was willing to buy and operate Tau ships, long story, for a chance to get that tech. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
It contains all the great houses, what was once Star League.
I mean, the houses all get killed off, and all the people leading it are dead, definitely. They lose horribly, but they have the bribe.
40k. But saying that, on an individual level, I'd wager it's a much closer fight. Of course, even the mighty Atlas isn't going to be scurrying up with a Warlord Titan, but come down to this...
I mean, to be fair, Warlord Titans don't scurry up against Warlord Titans because they're so valuable that you don't want to risk a Warlord in the case that it gets damaged. Not that it loses, that it gets damaged, because you're not replacing that shit. But, I mean, it might not be as strong as a Titan, but it's like an entire knight army on demand everywhere.
Scale of knights, and now we're talking about a real fight. Well, true, I would argue that even the most fearsome assault mechs are only equal to knights. Battle mechs have a lot more in the way of versatility.
And honestly, the small ones are so fast that it'd be amazing to use. Hell, some of the units in basic 40k Imperial Guard are the equivalent to what this light scout mechs would be, and frankly, it's worth it.
Battlemech is a catch-all term for warfare platforms that can do any number of roles and also happen to walk on 2 legs. While there are numerous different kinds of Imperial Knights, you can safely assume they're in one of 2 categories. They're either going to shoot you with cannons, or they're going to try and chop you up with big chainswords. Battlemechs, meanwhile, can be scouts, artillery, massive platforms of light weaponry, and more. Some might as well just be a big gun with legs, such as an urban mech pilot armed with little more than his AC-20 and a very hateful attitude towards anything larger than 40 tons. Some have melee weapons, because even in a setting as relatively grounded as Battletech, there are going to be some people who want to punch things with their giant robot. If you tell me you aren't one of them, I'm gonna call you a liar. There's a lot more you can do with a battle mech than a knight, or just about any of its non-imperial equivalents.
Also, they're just a lot cheaper. A light mech is just so much cheaper to get to. It's not even that, it's just they can field more. It's just amazing when you actually consider it. Ooh. Croc, you mentioned, this reminds me of the Kennekus walkers. Nobody knows how to turn on anymore, so instead of turning them off, they walk in hamster wheels when not used. Oh god, that's hilarious, man. I love that.
And tell me that if nothing else, the Lyran Commonwealth wouldn't be pumping out Titan equivalents the moment they saw what 40K was bringing to the table. There would be people with bigger things than them. That is an insult that House Steiner simply cannot let stand.
Also, the best part is, the reason that mechs don't usually get above 100 tons isn't because they can't build them. They can. There's plenty of examples. It's because jump ship technology, the ability to transport it between worlds, is almost impossible for them. Because they can't really do shit like that anymore. Hell, even at the height of the technology in Battletech, it couldn't do that. 40K can transport way more than a 100-ton mech. It's actually terrifying when you think about what Battletech could look like if that weight limit to move things effectively between planets was removed. It actually means they probably could make Warlord or Imperial Titan-sized mechs at a reasonable time frame. And by reasonable, I mean less than 100 years for a single one, which for 40K standards is still absurdly fast.
There's other smaller but still important things as well. Battletech FTL is fairly reliable, although it is slow, and unless you're skilled enough to jump to pirate points closer to planets, fairly predictable. But hey, there's also no monsters you have to worry about eating your soul whenever you jump to FTL speeds. So overall, Battletech loses through scale, but on the individual level, it's probably a lot more even. If nothing else, even a light mech stomping on a space marine is going to get the job done. Not much you can do about several thousand pounds of military hardware introducing you to the dirt. But with that, we've given 40K 3 wins so far, so I think it's about time to fix that.
Oh, this one. If we're going to go with DC, this is... Oh, it's also Marvel as well. There's so much variety in this one, man. Gold Age wins because Superman was literally the I can do everything button, and I do mean everything.
Put MCU slop or whatever abomination of filmmaking DC is putting out next out of your mind. Oh,
I don't even mean the slop they're making. Like, they've made slop before in comic format. If anything, the movies are catching up to the what the fuck are we looking at? The comics have been for a long time. Some are good, some aren't.
At their worst, just as bad in their own way, but at least no one's been shoving them down my throat for the last 15 years. No.
You lucky son of a bitch. How did you avoid that? I've had so many people like, hey, check out this comic. Hey, check out this comic. I'm like, I need to watch and read how many hundreds of comics to get the comment you're ranking right now? Maybe that's just my friend group, but it's been a problem.
If you're thinking on the lower end of things, then yeah, these guys are getting bodied. What the hell is the Green Arrow gonna do against the Space Marine? And if you're the kind of person who thinks Batman can prep time his way into fighting the Swarm Lord or Imhotep, I hate you. Prep time is what Batman fans use when they know they're full of shit. Of course, I do the same thing whenever people bring up Halo and the Halo array, so maybe I shouldn't throw rocks in my comfy glass house. I'm talking about the higher end stuff of the comics, like the Lantern Corps. They protect the entire universe. They could absolutely...
They protect the entire universe. This is a very much I can't believe I know this detail moment, because it's not 40K, sorry, the DC universe is weird. There is a distinct boundary to how large it is, so it's not infinite or huge or near insane sizes. There is a distinct boundary of what exactly exists, and there is nothing beyond that. And if you try to get there, you run into the source wall, which was the writers at the time going, we don't know what the edge of the universe looks like, so it's literally going to be everything that touches it is absorbed into it, is suffering eternally, and may or may not be alive. I don't think Thanos threw people in there, or was it Darkseid? I think it was Darkseid. Thanos is Marvel. Although I think Thanos has been in the DC universe to engage with it as well.
Deal with the people in the 40k universe. It'd take some effort, and they definitely wouldn't come away from it cleanly, but they could get it done. Or,
Maybe.
Superman? What the hell is a Bloodthirster gonna do against the Man of Steel?
It depends on which version you're fighting, because there has been a lot of changes to how powerful he is. Gold Age, or probably even Silver Age? No, Superman. Some of the later ones where he's more down to earth and people can just punch him really hard who are purely physical in nature. There's a very wide range here in how strong he is. But at the upper end, no, he just wins.
He's basically incorruptible, and he's more or less a physical god. No one's touching him. Or the Flash, who's so fast to make Superman look like he's moving through syrup. And that's not even getting into things like Galactus, who might as well be a Catan. There's all sorts of powerful beings in Marvel and DC that at the higher end of things make the 40k galaxy look pathetically weak.
Yeah.
Sure, at the lower end of things, 40k is gonna stomp. I don't think Spider-Man can quip his way out of getting his head melted by Cairo's Fate Weaver. But that version of Superman where he sat in the sun for millions of years just absorbing more power, yeah, he's...
I have not heard of that version. That is terrifying. How many years did he sit in the sun?
But that version of Superman where he sat in the sun for millions of years just...
Okay, sure. Millions of year old Superman sitting in the sun. That's a thing. And people are mentioning that Superman is weak to magic. Yes. But also, punching a magic person in the face and taking off their head is a great way to avoid that. Which is also how you deal with most magic wielders in 40k. Hit them first.
Just absorbing more power? Yeah, he's bodying anything the setting can throw at him. Or hell, Thanos. He casts Finger Snap. 40k is now half empty. God forbid there's any crossover beyond Marvel writing some Marnius Calgar books, though. I don't need half the Eldar lore getting sapped away. They're starving as it is.
See, that's just insane. They don't have enough for half of them to be gone anymore. They don't have that half. They've lost way more than that. And I do mean both in lore and in the actual tabletop.
In fact, in the spirit of superpowered beings bodying 40k, there's an account called the Drunken Guardsman on Twitter.
Sanguinius versus Omni-Man. Who wins? Pretty sure Omni-Man? I don't know almost anything about Invincible. For some reason, it just never really caught my interest. No idea why.
Who did a couple of versus tweets about who would win, with one being 40k and the other being someone not from 40k. One of them was Sanguinius versus Omni-Man, and truth be told, that was one of the inspirations for this video.
Oh.
Anyways, to answer that who would win question, I have my own question for you. What the hell is Sanguinius gonna do when Omni-Man starts tossing capital ships at him from orbit? There's an argument to be made that maybe 40k could BS its way into a win versus Marvel and DC stronger characters.
I mean, if he starts tossing capital ships at him, I'm not sure Sanguinius could handle it, but mimetically Angron could probably do it, considering he started throwing around titans. Yeah, that was a thing that did exist in one of the books about heresy.
Morality in 40k is a funny joke. Maybe they can brutalize the other two settings into defeat. You're not doing that with Viltrumites. They're a race of Supermans hell-bent on conquest and don't view other races as being worth jack.
I'm going to say something spoilery. It's one of the few things I do know about this series. So if you don't want spoilers for Invincible, because this is one of the few things I do know about in advance, stop here and maybe wait, pause the video, skip ahead 30 seconds. The Viltrumites would lose because there's like 6 of them. There's not 6. I think by the end of the series, their big weakness is there's not enough of them for a stable population. And they get weaker as they spread out their genes. So they are a dying species when any of them die, even just of old age, or more likely getting ganked on by everything. They're basically all irreplaceable at this point. So yeah, individually they are unbeatable, but every time one is beaten, it's literally not ever replaced. It's the Custodes problem on tabletop. Everyone is amazing, but when one dies, you are fucked. That's the thing. Okay, spoiler over.
They can obliterate entire planets over the course of a few days at most, and have their own vast empire to rival 40k. And while I don't think they're incorruptible in the sense of being immune to chaos, why the hell would any one of them fall to it? They have everything they need and view non-Viltrumites as dirt. I've not read the comics, so I admit maybe I'm missing something, but I think... Yeah. Chaos is on the chopping block as much as anyone else. You could argue they might fall to Korn, and yeah, they might, or they'd see it as selling themselves off to a higher power and tell Korn to go kick bricks.
I have no idea if they would or not.
With the exception of people like Magnus the Red at the very highest level of it, I don't think Psyker powers are going to do anything either. Viltrumites are at that level of physical power that just overwhelms anything else. An Eldar Psyker or a Necron Cryptek can prepare whatever spell or incantation to rewrite the Viltrumite out of existence that they want.
Probably.
It doesn't matter
time
if in
travel's
the time
always
it
bullshit.
takes to start casting the spell, Omni-Man can fly around the whole planet and rip their spine out from behind them. And even things like Foresight that a lot of characters in 40k have wouldn't be of much help. Here's my
I mean, to be fair, Foresight in 40k doesn't help there either.
reasoning for that. If you're tied to railroad tracks with no way out, you can safely assume a train is going to run you over eventually. You can't do anything about it, though. And while there's certainly not a lot of Viltrumites, there's enough that you can have a couple dozen of them on a single battlefield if you...
Saying there's not many is kind of an overstatement. They are so incredibly spread out. Again, it's the spoiler thing yeah, I'm just going to drop that one.
Absolutely must have that. What the hell's the guard gonna do about one of them, let alone a dozen? Hell, if you throw enough of them at the Emperor, he's probably gonna get his shit rocked too. I have an immediate confession to make. I only said enough of them as a peace offering. One of them is probably enough. But yeah, Viltrumites beat 40k stuff.
They're in Fortnite? You know, that's not even the thing I should say anymore. I just assume that everything is in 40k. Let's just leave it at that. Everything is in Fortnite.
Included them in the video because I have the Omni-Man skin in Fortnite, so if you disagree, I don't feel too passionately about it. But you know what I do feel passionately about? Or really all of Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball Z is what makes people sit up. You know what I've always found funny? Dragon Ball Z has some pretty fantastic FTL tech in it. I mean, Bulma and Mr. Popo went to Jupiter in like, what, 10 seconds? It takes Light 43 minutes to do that. That alone makes it stronger than 40k and significant.
I mean, Goku just teleports at will with no downside. And that's just something he does eventually abused in fighting, but
significant ways.
Can't really tell the
let's
difference.
not kid ourselves. No one cares about Dragon Ball's FTL technology.
Including Dragon Ball.
People screaming and punching each other, and by God, that's how Dragon Ball Z is gonna kick the hell out of 40k. No,
I mean, at this point, this is literally the setup to Korn becoming another one of the Z Warriors because they outfight him and he becomes obsessive. He's basically Vegeta, but taller. And because having to fight would be funny as hell. I probably just pissed a lot of people off saying that, and I'm not apologizing for that one. Scarbrand would just be pissed off. I was like, still can't join him. I'm overspeaking there. Scarbrand is mentally deficient on purpose, but that's different.
I think power scaling debates can be pretty whack, even though I've now made 5 videos doing more or less that exact thing.
He's made other videos?
I've never claimed
Neat.
I wasn't a hypocrite. I really don't care about discussing who would win in a fight, Goku or
It's all
Gear
just
5
about
Luffy.
funny, man.
It's obviously Goku, so who cares? That said, I've been a Dragon Ball fan since I was little, and you can't be a Dragon Ball fan without at least being passively aware that there are entire communities of people who sit down and try to figure out exactly how much stronger Goku is from the start of Dragon Ball compared to Super. So
Yeah, I've run into those communities. They are a thing. All I can say is that they are definitely very much a thing. I have run into those arguments before. They start in weird places online, and then they continue for hours. And by hours, I'm lying. I mean, they never end.
So in the spirit of the video and being the weeb trash I am, let's do some anime power scaling. Take a Cyberman. They have a power level of roughly 1. 1 Raditz, that is. At half a Raditz, Piccolo could blow up the moon. Hell, at like a quart of a Raditz tops, Master Roshi blew up the moon. At 15 Raditz, Vegeta could blow up the Earth. To stop...
They power scale badly. This is also one of the things where Toriyama did not give a damn. He was just doing rule of cool the entire time. And honestly, it worked, yeah.
Stop ripping off Dragon Ball Z Abridged, Frieza at less than 1% of his power destroyed the strongest warrior race in existence with a single finger, who themselves could take out entire planets worth of people as infants. What the hell is anyone in 40k short of maybe the gods gonna do when the Saiyan drop pods start landing? To be fair, if any of the people in this video are gonna do something like Fall to Chaos, it'd be the Saiyans.
I mean, it wouldn't even be a fall to chaos. They'd just be wondering why they're spikier than usual. They wouldn't even notice.
Like the perfect thing for Korn, and I imagine at least a good chunk of them would probably embrace it wholeheartedly. Korn likes...
I don't know. Saiyan Pride might also go for Slanesh on this one.
Strong warriors and fighting. Saiyans like strong warriors and fighting. Can you imagine a Saiyan demon prince? To hell with the Primarchs, Catan aren't walking away from that fight. Maybe that's how the Silent King shattered them all. He ripped open a rift to Dragon Ball and grabbed a couple of Saiyans and threw at the problem. And of course, named characters. Krillin is already obliterating anyone the setting can throw at him. Nah, you know what? I'm not taking the favoritism far enough. Yamcha could probably do it by the Cell Saga at the latest. But let's highlight my favorite of them all, Vegeta. As a good way to know if I'm absolutely hammered, see if I'm excessively posting about Vegeta on Twitter. He's great, and he'd rip 40k apart if he felt like it. Nothing's stopping him, because at his level, fighting is the kind of thing that can start shaking the universe apart, like Goku and Beerus almost did. Psychic powers, you might say, since that's the default for whenever 40k faces a threat. Saiyans have no defense against magic. And I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
It's not like Vegeta's ever fought someone who's both overwhelmingly powerful and psychic. It's not like...
Yeah, but they also kinda got bodied multiple times before a lot of other shit happened, so that's not exactly the best option.
Vegeta's ever fought against someone who's magical in one way or another. It's not like Vegeta's been outright mind-controlled only for him to break free because he's so full of his own shit he just ignores the mind control.
I mean, he also died. Let's not forget that part.
He's not just destroying the setting. I'm half convinced he'd become a full-blown Chaos God because of how big of an ego he has. All hail Vegeta, the Chaos God of pride and not knowing when to quit. Don't forget...
Yeah, I could actually see that. That would actually be a thing. It would take the, be careful, I'm turning left. If you get the joke. I'm not apologizing for that one. Oh, God.
Get the Gods of Destruction, or Zeno, who could just decide 40k has lost existing privileges. There's no fight, no Chaos Gods or Big E holding off his power. He just waves his hand, and no more universe. 40k doesn't even beat Dragon Ball and racism. Until the end of Dragon Ball, Vegeta looked down on everyone who wasn't a Saiyan as dirt, looked down on Saiyans who weren't him as dirt, and looked down on Goku like he was dirt covered in vomit. And of course, who can forget about Frieza? Frieza would make the Eldar uncomfortable with how often he calls someone a monkey. You can find compilations of Frieza saying monkey on YouTube. One of them is over 3 minutes long of racial slurs.
I mean, he's not wrong, and it was also meant exactly like that.
Frieza's the best villain, truly. But yeah, Dragon Ball stomps. I made a community post about this a while ago because I decided that, yeah, I should make a Dragon Ball 40k video. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I did.
He
so
did?
Here's the
Oh,
abridged
no.
version, since it's about the most I can make without it being a pretty shite video even by my standards. God, I'm the cleverest man around, aren't I? Get it? The abridged version? Because Dragon Ball Z abridged? Get it? Do you get the funny joke?
This is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged reference. I knew it! Little Kribo got in here somehow.
Moving on now. No more
I don't know
anime as a
nearly
main
enough about
topic,
Stellaris.
I tentatively promise. Never
I even own this game, I think. Actually, no, I don't think I have this one. I have... Maybe it is Stellaris. Yeah, I think I have Stellaris. I do not know nearly enough about it because I realized quickly on I have no idea what I'm looking at.
For this one, you may be a bit confused. Stellaris isn't really a setting with defined factions and whatnot. I mean, there's the preset empires, and they used the Commonwealth of Man for the trailer that introduced Planet Killers, but nothing beyond that.
Ooh.
But look deeper at the things you can
I did not
find
get
in
that far.
Stellaris, and it's the sort of thing that would make the Necrons afraid. The endgame tech is the stuff of nightmares. The machine ascension is just straight-up Necron biotransference. The end of the cycle is the fall of the Eldar, if instead of just creating the Eye of Terror, it created an Eye of Terror that moved around the galaxy and hunted everyone down.
The what of the what? I never got this far because my system crapped out. Modify 600 months. Give the following reason. Oh, God. Do not do this. Oh, wow. Okay.
The war in heaven in Stellaris isn't some mythical background event, it's two colossally powerful empires unleashing weapons that can crack planets in half at a whim. And that's not even getting into the Become the Crisis path, where your civilization doesn't just reach a point of eclipsing the Eldar or 1,000 Suns as Psychers, they become a race of Chaos God.
The framework of the great Atheros phasic engine we are building around the star of our home system is in place. Megastructure, once complete, will tear open the veil between our world and the Shroud. We will no longer have to suffer the indignity of having to tunnel our way into the psychic realm like vermin. Instead, we will march across en masse as conquerors. Reality can then be remade as we see fit. We shall be as gods. Oh, it's literally the become the old ones option. I did not get this far in the game.
Even
I also
before
lost.
that, there's plenty of powerful things you can do, and with mods it gets even more ballistic, turning entire moons into weapons platforms, quadruple layer ring worlds around your stars, Dyson spheres across the Empire. You can create star-spanning nations that dwarf 40k in all ways possible. And
You ever get the point in a game where you realize you're losing and then find out you're losing on the easy baby mode that has none of the actually hard shit unlocked? I'm having that right now where apparently I failed the tutorial. Okay.
And while I'm not going to pretend that half the stuff in it isn't inspired by 40k, and by inspired I mean ripped off, it also takes it all to a new level. You know the Pretherans, aka the not Tyranids? Unlike the Tyranids, who are ever only hinted at most to be running from something, the Pretheran are running from something. Something that caused the galaxy to dim and then fade as your scientist watched it. And to top it off, the atrocities you can commit in Stellaris even eclipse 40k. Sure, you can do the classic kill all aliens thing and recreate the Imperium of Man for the 1000th time. No judgment here, every Stellaris player has done it. The game encourages you to be a monster, not just because of the buffs, but because it means the endgame won't be running at 10 frames a second because of...
That's the problem. I was going the peaceful diplomacy route and never invested in ships. That would explain why I took a turn and then the computer took 10 minutes. I'd like to point out I'm running this on a 4090. That's a problem.
There's just too many different empires in the galaxy. But the things people have done in that game, my god. My favorite is the guy who enslaved part of an empire, turned the citizens into food, and then set up a trade agreement with the former empire to give them food. That mad bastard turned a species into snacks and then sold them back to their fellows.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is fucked up. That is way more fucked up. Okay. Also, someone in the chat, Bill, mentioned people think Worm is weak because he can be killed with regular ass bullets, but what people don't get is Worm isn't only love, but also life. What? The only Worm I know is the Parahumans one, and that's the one weird one where it's like at the lower end and the medium end, even the lower high end, everything can get killed easy by 40k, but at the upper end of Worm, Parahumans, it bodies not all of 40k, but it can keep up.
Attention, Black Library writers. That's how you write a war crime. Now this is one hell of a
god.
Here's the thing.
I've heard of these guys. Yeah.
That inspired the video even more than the Omni-Man versus Sanguinius tweet. For those of you who've never heard of it, the Zealey sequence of books is a science fiction series written by Stephen Baxter. I have yet to read it fully, but it's more of a setting-driven series and a character one to my knowledge.
For anyone who doesn't understand what a setting versus a character-driven book is, think, well, honestly, The Wheel of Time is mostly character, but frankly, it feels more setting until it was taken over by a different writer. But it's like the Foundation series by Asimov. You have the plot that he wants to tell a story about these ideas and this group of what happens. And then there are people who have to do things to make it happen. They're set pieces to show ideas being portrayed. In the Foundation, it's the idea of predictive history and how you can see exactly what's going to happen, understand what's going to happen because you see history, so you understand history, so you know what's going to happen based on the previous history because it always rhymes really close together and there's no variation. Zealey, from what I heard, took that as a baseline and ran with it because I haven't read it because it doesn't really interest me, but I know enough about this writing style that I do appreciate, even though I'm not quite into this style.
Planet are vessels for the universe at large. It is also, to my understanding, one of, if not the single most overpowered setting in all of science fiction. Let's take the Interim Coalition of Governance, or ICOG for short. The ICOG is a brutal dictatorship that makes the Imperium look cuddly and friendly. I'm not just talking xenophobia, I'm talking sending trillions of child soldiers to die against aliens because it's easier to do than building robots or something of that sort. And who can forget skinning aliens known as silver ghosts alive being considered a family-friendly activity before the concept of family was done away with in favor of more child soldiers. And they're not poorly equipped by any means. They have Melta-like weapons that can kill thousands in a single second. Their equivalent of an assault rifle is a gut weapon. If you're anything like me, you might wonder what gut means. To simplify it, take the Big Bang, the event that started our universe. Now turn it into a gun. The ICOG can throw stars at you. In their war against the Zealey, they threw so much shit at the galactic core that the entire thing glowed bright pink. They changed the color of the galaxy because of how violently they were fighting. They have time travel weaponized to the point that they use it to police their empire. If you commit a treasonous act, they don't just kill you. They torture you, kill you, then go back in time and do it to your past self who doesn't even know what the hell you were going to do. Their military is in numbers far beyond the Imperial Guard that makes...
Spoiler here, because I did look this up because I found it fascinating, but I never actually want to read it. What he's describing right now, is not the upper end in that series. This is the baseline. Yeah. And this is not the strongest one. I'm still forgetting the name of the AI-based books, where it was all a bunch of AI-controlled principalities, essentially. Ascension, Foundation. No, Foundation was Asimov. Ascension's a game. It's a one-word thing. He may or may not get to it. I don't even know, but it's an entire book series where it's just, we're going to rewrite reality casually today.
The old ones look like children, and they have eliminated all non-human life in at least one galaxy. So I bet you're thinking that, damn, the ICOG really is like the Imperium of Man, but even crazier. I bet they're the masters of their setting too, right?
Oh, he's getting to it.
Fucking close. From the admittance of a member of it, they aren't the destined rulers of all reality, even with all of their tech. He outright compares mankind to vermin, spreading across the stars and multiplying in defiance of those who they know are their betters in every way possible. Let's start with the Transcendence. The Transcendence is humanity from the far, far, far future. What exactly they are is hard to define, because unlike most of the time with this sort of thing, the Transcendents are a race that is actually transcendent. They are to us what we are to ants, and trying to understand them is an exercise in futility. They wanted to create a utopia free of suffering for mankind. Problem is, they couldn't do that if there was any suffering, because they were every human merged into one, but also not, but also yes. If anyone in any timeline was feeling suffering, they were suffering and were weakened for it. Their way of eliminating human suffering was to fold every single timeline into one, and if they couldn't eliminate suffering through this, they would end humanity so it could be free of suffering. Let me clarify that for you, because fold every timeline into one sounds like a lot of nothing. Raise your hand for me and open and close it. There's a timeline where I told you to snap your fingers instead. There's a timeline where I said clap your hands. Those are the only events that are in any way different between those two timelines. This sentence, everything before and after it, and all the history of the world and universe at large are still the same.
What he's describing, for anyone who goes really crazy on, at this point, metaphysics is probably the best way to describe it. He's going from a multiple universe theory of there are multiple actions, multiple outcomes. What you do in one world might not be the same in another, and there could be multiple versions of Earth in multiple universes, to all of them are now a solid, descriptive, deterministic world, and we're the ones who just determined it. Yeah, it goes from multiple theories to there is one world, it is the one we made, there is no other option, it is exactly what we said. Yeah, those are both competing theories of how the universe works. Neither one, of course, can be proven because they're just so massive. And then, they just said, okay, we're going to change the theory of one into the other by force.
Transcendence wanted to forcibly merge every single variation of that choice and every single other timeline created by different choices and events in history into one. They had the capability to do it. They were gods. They were, to put it lightly, transcendent. They could turn you into a mathematical equation and force you to watch the universe die of premature heat death because you, in particular, pissed them off. Of course, even describing the transcendent as pissed off is tricky because emotions as we understand them just don't fit the bill. And even they were nothing in the end, because, to repeat myself, the Zeeli were to them what the Transcendence was to us what we are to ants. With one singular practical exception, the Zeeli are unstoppable. Entire galactic superclusters are construction material to them. The Transcendents were tryhards stepping out of their league and were stomped back into the Stone Age along with the rest of humanity by the Zeeli. They have existed since the moment the universe formed after the Big Bang, and when that wasn't enough for their plans, they built an AI called the Anti-Zeeli that would go back in time to give them a billion-year head start on civilization building. The stuff their constructs are made out of, rather unimaginatively called Zeeli construction material, is 100% energy efficient with absorption. As in, the energy of anything you shoot them with is completely absorbed and ignored, no matter how powerful. To them, a supermassive black hole in the surrounding galaxy isn't a new place to conquer or explore and colonize, it's a computer.
Yeah. And from what I remember, I think the Zeeli were mostly the higher end, but I could be misremembering this, but I thought there was one thing that was more powerful than them, but I do not remember if I'm thinking of this or a different series at this point. It's been a while since I looked this up.
The ICOG waged against them ended with the Zeeli leaving the galaxy, not because mankind truly won, but because the Zeeli were sick of humanity's crap and left them to their fate. For a good chunk of the war, the Zeeli just ignored humanity because mankind was that far beneath them. And by the way, when I say the Zeeli, I don't mean the race of the Zeeli. I mean the Zeeli, singular, who was in the Milky Way galaxy. They used entire galaxies to construct a ring millions of light years across that would send them to entirely different realities. Their weapons could bisect entire galaxies, species, and their leftover junk was the sort of thing that catapulted lesser species into a golden age. They were the undisputed masters of baryonic matter. You, your house, your school, your place of work, if it can be considered a thing, the Zeely can rework it and the laws of physics that make it possible to suit their needs. And what you might consider a bit of a twist, they were ultimately benevolent. Their ring wasn't a weapon, it was an escape route, because the only thing capable of beating the Masters of Matter were the Masters of Dark Matter, the Photino birds. All you need to know about them is that the Zeely were fighting a war against them and losing.
This is what I remember. Okay, I wasn't entirely sure if this was the right one or not, but no, apparently it was. I did remember this correctly.
Badly. The birds were introducing premature heat death into the entire universe for the sole reason of making reality more comfortable to them. The Zeely time-traveled back to the beginning of existence itself to get themselves a head start, because otherwise they couldn't save anyone from a universe that would die billions of years early. And it's at least partially implied that the birds weren't even aware they were fighting a war against the Zeely. The setting isn't going to win against 40k. The setting isn't going to realize it and 40k are in a war. You know what the
This is the Chaos Gods in the extreme of, based on humans, dying because no one realized they were there. Which is also one of the ways that the Chaos Gods were theoretically going to be destroyed in 40k prior to Horus Heresy not going the way of Horus, which was actually the way it was planned to go initially. This might sound confusing, but basically, the initial way to kill the 40k Chaos Gods, as seen by the Illuminati, yeah, they brought that into 40k Horus Heresy, was, hey, if humanity wins and they wipe themselves out by, humanity winning, Horus winning, overthrowing the Emperor, eventually realizing how horrible it was because he realized what's horrible, and he breaks free of the Chaos Gods and eventually destroys everything. Humanity's wiped out, and the sudden loss of all the worshippers they came to depend on wipes out the Chaos Gods, freeing the universe from chaos. Yeah. That didn't happen. That was the plan. Zeely would do it by accident, by losing.
Kicker is, this setting with all of its tech that could rewrite 40k out of existence, with time-traveling AI rewriting the laws of physics and objects that can take the force of the Big Bang and not even notice, it's hard sci-fi. The biggest scientific inaccuracies within the Zeely sequence aren't because that's not how reality works, they're because our understanding of science has advanced since the books were written. Their time travel works because of general relativity and how approaching light speed warps time and space around you. Changing universal constants like the Silver Ghost do, who by the way aren't even particularly powerful within the setting, would result in AI with infinite computation power that can give you the answer to your question before you ask it. In theory, almost everything in these books is or was considered fully possible to one degree or another. Have fun with that thought. A few other things.
No, don't you dare just drop that in there and let me not read it. Alternative title, man, I really need to get Photoshop so I can have illustrations and actual thumbnails. But let's be real, I'm not going to do that. And frankly, how long ago did this come out? A year ago? You shouldn't do Photoshop in general. Don't. Just don't.
A few other things popped in my head that I couldn't think of enough words to make entire segments out of, but wanted to mention them regardless. For starters, I lied about that being anime because Gurren Lagann is up first. Explain to me how 40k is going to fight this thing off. You can't grimdark only war your way into beating it.
Theoretically, they could still make some claims that there is a larger Tyranid bioform that is literally bigger than this because no one is aware of how big it is. It would be absolute bullshit, but it'd be fun. Can you imagine if you were actually fighting a galaxy-wide? We're not actually protecting the galaxy. We're keeping the galaxy surviving inside the gullet of a Tyranid. They won't because their setting would not survive that, and they can't sell models equal to that. But it is entirely possible in the sense that they haven't ever said what the Tyranids are, so they can get away with it. Would it be stupid? Yes. Yes, it would be. But theoretically, they can bullshit their way to that. But it would just be bullshit.
Doom has decided he is manlier than you are, so you lost. I don't make the rules, it just happens. Doom also wins pretty handily, I'd wager.
Really?
I don't mean the demons or makers, I mean the Doomslayer. That's all that's needed. If you drop the Doomslayer into the Great Rift, within weeks there is no more Great Rift, and everyone else would be too terrified of the guy to do anything about him.
I mean, essentially, yeah, he's a mimetic being who has become so mimetic that the actual canon lore for Doom is that he is a mimetic slayer. So it's kind of one of those, the meme became the actual plot line.
Except Malum Cato, maybe. They'd probably be good friends. Individual beings from Age of Sigmar could probably do pretty well in 40k. This is another one of those things that would probably be worth its own video, but in brief,
This is actually one of the interesting ones bringing over Age of Sigmar, just because the biggest difference there, and I'm going to piss off a lot of people, is that you could forge souls. One of the ways they have depowered Slaanesh in there is taken souls out of Slaanesh to reuse on their side. In 40k, when you are claimed by one of the gods, you are claimed. That's the end of it, unless another god takes it. But that's the thing. There are no other gods. If the Emperor ever became a human god that wasn't the Dark Lord or the Dark Master, or the Dark King or whatever, he could take people back from the 40k gods because that's a thing they could do. You could unfuck the Primarchs. And considering how 40k has some interesting use of causality, we could have the good version versus the bad version of the Primarch. Or in general, that would just be Angron punching himself because there's no difference at that point.
The gods in the mortal realms would do just fine, if nothing else. Nagash would very promptly become ascendant in a way like never before, because there was a whole lot of death going
and
around.
No one else to say
Tyrion
it.
and Teclis could revitalize the Eldar, if for no other reason than the elves in the fantasy side of Warhammer are infinitely more competent than their 40k cousins. And if you drop the Great Horned Rat into 40k, he probably wouldn't even realize he's in the wrong setting. He just said about making Hive Worlds somehow even worse to live on than they already are.
Honestly, no one would notice the difference at that point.
Oh, and Gotrek. Gotrek would murder anything that tries to get in his way still.
Like, legitimately, canon him survived chaos winning by just being too angry to die when he's intentionally trying to die because his friend died. And may or may not have been reborn yet. I don't actually remember that part. He's basically the Doomslayer in 40k. He is what Sly Marlborough's joking form is, but actually made canon.
Doesn't matter what. He's looking for Felix, and by God, if he has to slaughter demon primarchs to find him, then that's just what he's gonna
gods.
do. And really, I think that
he became the pseudo-god to hold places
I can
for
keep
it.
going with settings, sure, but I wanted a nice variety for the video of can't beat 40k and can beat 40k, and I think I got that. So you may ask, what was the point of this?
Because
there's actually two takeaways here. If I put all of this under a guise of matching settings up against Warhammer, I get to talk about things I like without it syncing my channel's analytics. You've all been fooled by my master scheme, get own-zoned. But also, who really cares how OP a setting is? Does it really matter if some schmuck from another setting can beat the Emperor? Enjoy the setting for the wild and wacky stuff you can find in it you can't quite find anywhere else. I just think it's cool to imagine things like Night Houses going against Assault Lances while the Primarchs and Captain America duke it out in the foreground. It's silly, it's got the same energy as smashing two different action figures together as a kid, and in my mind that's the ideal way to view 40k. Not as the narrative version of a dick measuring contest. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are
dude, did he mention Fortnite? There's a section here called Did he mention Fortnite? I need to include it because it's part of the video, but I don't like this.
Real talk, when are we getting Warhammer Fortnite collabs? I mean, really, it's well overdue. Cell and Frieza are coming, and that's not even the first Dragon Ball collab. Where's the love for Warhammer?
They brought in freaking Godzilla and Miku. I know he's saying this is a joke at this point, but he's not wrong. There will eventually be 40k in there. I mean, they already collabed with Hasbro to make 40k cards, and admittedly, I have a few. I'd like to collect the rest just because I like to collect them, but yeah, there will be 40k. If they ever did a 40k version of Fortnite, and they opened up as 100 versus 100 battles, that actually unironically sounds amazing. And would probably be my favorite 40k game immediately. I have no idea how to feel about this. Huh. Sorry, I'm just having a mental brain death moment here by thinking of a valid and more likely than not completely going to happen moment where I want to play Fortnite. I don't feel good about this. I'm just... Okay, yeah, we went there. So yeah, I'm glad he brought in Zeely's sequence. I'm glad he brought up so many cool things. Dragon Ball, obviously. Stellaris, I suck at the game so hard I never realized it got that powerful because I died well earlier into it. But again, that's the entire not being good at the game part. But there's just so many cool things, and I'm glad he did this. What I'm taking away from this, though, is I need to go back to Stellaris and try and figure out what the hell I'm doing in that. Yeah. So if you haven't already, there's a link below. If there's anything else from PancreasNoWork I should check out, let me know, because this was really cool. He looked into a bunch of cool settings to see how they would work, and I like this kind of stuff. It's a complete guilty pleasure for me, so I'm glad I checked it out after over a year of being told to check it out and still hadn't done it. So yeah, that's on me. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.